let's talk about the user conference. Then why did you even create a user conference in this first place? I mean, I know when I try to do this at Laz, it's so expensive and
Yeah,
a lot of work, right? And
it's a
so,
lot of work.
yeah, like why did you do it? And can you talk about, bringing it to life?
It is a lot of work, and you really like as a startup have to think really hard about when you're ready for it because basically I do think that once you debut a user conference, you can't go back. Like you're not going to stop doing it, and you shouldn't stop doing it because that sends a whole different message. It didn't work. We failed at this. We don't have enough users for user conference. We can't justify this. Like you don't want to do that. You don't want to be that startup. So like if you're committing to a program basically for life, you have to make sure you're ready. So why do you do it? Because all of the best tech companies have one. Because you have a community of users out in the world somewhere in the wild and bring them together where they're all in the same place at the same time, learning about your product because they're actually kind of excited to be there and learn about what you're debuting. There is no better gratification for a software company than actually seeing it, right? Like you spend every single day building stuff for people. You're delighted when they use it. You're delighted when they buy it. But there's nothing that feels better than you get them all in the same auditorium and they're rip roaring ready to hear you say like what you're about to announce as a product and people clap, applaud, and whoop and cheer, and you didn't pay them to do it. Like that's it's a rush like you've never experienced before. On the business side, you're looking at retention, you are looking at contract expansion because typically, you're trying to align your conference around you're launching something big and new. You want to launch something big and new every year if you can. And every time you do, you do it on the hopes that it will make your product more sticky or you're going to charge more for it so it will make your company more money and like you have this literally a focal point to align the entire company around. Like we are launching this in March, um, or or nothing. There's no other choice because we put it up, we sold the tickets, and we're going to be there in March, and we're going to launch this thing. Which is where in some cases you see like a vaporware launch is because like the cart got put before the horse. You didn't actually build the product, it's not ready, but you have the auditorium full of people and they're waiting and like well, it's got to be launched somehow. But unfortunately, that is also like a type of standard that you can fall back on if you really need to.
Yeah, when we did this at Lattice, it was amazing to watch the internal, what's the like the crazy amount of internal focus and push towards the conference, but then also just how excited everyone was when the conference came.
Yeah,
Like the look on Jack, the CEO's face when he got on stage and could feel the
yeah,
community and stuff that he had helped built, and just everyone was smiling and exciting, and like,
yeah,
I don't know how much like revenue or pipeline or whatever it drove, but it
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
like retained employees, got customers so excited, and like we sit behind our computers all day.
yeah,
It's so different to be in a room full of your customers and everyone
totally.
is super excited. It's like an
Yeah,
amazing feeling.
100% agree. But then you have to keep
Yeah.
doing it every year.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have like a recommendation for companies thinking about this? I mean, is the best way to think about it like budget perspective? Like I think at Lattice, I mean, I'm trying to remember the exact numbers. We did a smaller one for like couple hundred K, two to
Yeah.
400 maybe. And then it was like, oh, let's do $1 million one. And
Hmm.
COVID hurt that
Yeah.
idea. But yeah, I don't know how do you think about when should companies do this?
Yeah. Well, so as far as when, I actually think that it's okay to start small. Like you don't have to wait until you have thousands of users or thousands of customers. It's really about when you want to start punching above your weight class, but you're ready to commit. You are dedicated to the idea of and forming and feeding a community around your product. And if you can envision one future day where like, you know, Dreamforce, right? Like Dreamforce is like one of your guiding stars. You can envision doing a conference for 20 years and the audience just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Like it's time, right? That's when it's time is because you can actually envision it. You can actually tie a thread, even if it's a dream thread. That's when you can start, especially when you're on like project like roadmap or product roadmap and launch cadence where you can actually start sorting away from just like constant small launches into let's have a big vision. Let's share a big vision. Let's unite customers around a big vision. That's when it's a good time. And you can start small, and by small I mean like 100 people at a conference, still great, still a great time because you record the whole thing. You have the video for video on demand afterwards, and you could stream it. People can stream it as often as they want. 100 people inside of the correctly sized space are still having a really great time together when it's a well produced, like high production value event. And I always used to think about it. Like I know this is probably not the gold standard of an event planner, but I used to think about it on a cost per. I would think about all my stuff as a cost per unit. That for me was the simplest like way of keeping track and not letting things go too far awry. And for me, like a golden number was about $1,000 a head, $1,000 a head per segment for a user conference, and not above that. And that's where I kept like the line is if you can go all in with your vendors and your services and all the fees and you just like everything stacks up, you've spent $1,000 like making sure that one customer in the audience has had a good time that day. You don't need to go too far. Like it's really easy to spiral out of control and end up spending a lot more than that. But you don't need to. That's about the amount where you can fed them, you can keep them nicely fed. They had a good time and they were accounted for like, 8 hours that day. And it felt like pretty high production value. But on the flip side, like that, it's kind of scrappy when you actually start to break it down. And in fact, with service costs being really, really, really high now in a city like San Francisco, where there's a lot of unions and like labor unions inside of large event spaces. Now maybe it's like 1,200, 1,300, but you do not need to be spending $3,000 per head. And then another mistake that you don't need to make is, you think about your conference as the time that you're going to get the whole company together and attending your conference, right? So this is when you see, I see this. You've been there. You are seeing like 50 customers in the crowd and 100 people from your staff. And now what did you just do? You spent $1,000 per head because it's just like $1,000 per human person who takes up space. You're blowing it on the people that already work for you as opposed to the customers. So we would only let people come physically to the conference if they had a slot on the stage, if they had some form of work to do in terms of boothing or selling on the floor or volunteering, like directing people to the bathrooms and whatever, all that kind of stuff. And otherwise, you're sitting at the office live streaming it from there.
Yeah, that was very, yeah, you made me think of some very funny internal conversations where it's like, you guys can come, you can't, and it gets
Yeah,
dicey, but to your point, it gets so expensive. And yeah, I think we actually had a very similar budget, $1,000 a head, but that, that's where it's like, oh, $1 million conference sounds crazy, but if you want 1,000 people at a
yeah,
conference
exactly.
for $1,000 a person, there's your number right there. And it's
Yep.
really hard to do that.